What actually matters is we need to have the right accounts at the right time. And the way that you determine the right time is through the signals. And so there's a very easy example. You take your best fit tier 1 account and the best person into it. Let's say you're selling to the CMO at these Fortune 500 companies, and all of a sudden you're just going to send a cold email to that person. And the ability for you to turn that cold email into a customer is going to be incredibly unproductive, incredibly low efficiency, especially if done at scale. That if you had the same exact person at the same exact account, and that person said, hey, I want a pricing request, or they came to your event and said, hey, I want to see a demo after that event was really interesting, that you have the same person at the same account, the fit is the same, but the signal is entirely different, and the signal makes all the difference. As I talked about last week, maybe we would have something more tangible, practical to share, especially based on all the feedback that you all have been providing the past couple of weeks. So we're prepared to share some of that today. So I actually have some slides, a deck, I don't know what else to call it, it's slides and a deck, some concepts to start to go deeper into the concept of signals. Hopefully we're able to flesh it out together. I have been trialing this both with our current customers at Posetto as well as new prospective customers, think 100 million ARR SaaS company trying to figure out what to do in their go-to-market. And this is it. Like the concept of signals, when you match it and say, we need to think about the fit of our account, the buyer persona, in addition to the account firmographics and demographics about why they make it a good account and a good customer for us, combined with a whole new dimension of what signals are these accounts sending us that then deem our sales team to invest time, resources, and energy to be able to try and go and convert that customer into a meeting, into pipeline, and things like that. And the reality is that most companies don't track 70 to 100% of the signal data. And therefore, their sales team, the most expensive part of their company, does a ton of stuff that clearly doesn't work over and over and over again because no one's looking at the data to see why it's happening. And then on the other side, marketing investments get spent, 60 to 80% of marketing budgets get spent specifically to create a signal. Spend money, get a signal. Spend money, get a signal. Almost the whole marketing budget spent that way. And there are a lot of money that goes into marketing investments to create signals that never convert to pipeline and customers. And when you look at the signal and you isolate it, you clearly see we're wasting all this money over here in marketing. We're wasting all this time over here in sales. Let's just eliminate or start to divest from those things. And then here's all the new shit that we can put on top of it that's going to deliver so much better ROI, better for our customers, better EBITDA profile as we try and approach Rule of 40 or Rule of 50. It's just flat out that most of the companies that I interact with at Posetto, although we just closed our first industrial manufacturing company, we work with med tech companies, so we're outside of just SaaS and technology at Posetto, which I'm excited about. But a majority of the companies that I've worked with over the past 5 years have been private equity or venture funded software and technology companies. And the reality is that those companies just spend way too much money on sales and marketing in a super inefficient way. And when you're trying to be 20% EBITDA positive instead of EBITDA neutral, it's pretty hard to do that when you spend 50 or 60% of your total revenue on sales and marketing. And the reality is that 20% delta of sales and marketing costs is just excess waste that they can't identify how to get rid of. But there are people, processes, technologies, and investments that are clearly low productive and inefficient that would, if cut out, would put 10, 20, 30% back on the bottom line. And so with that little preamble, let's get into some details about the concepts and how this works. We will be sharing this, although this is I love this format for us specifically because this is like a dry run for me. Like, I don't think that it's all figured out, and we're using this as a way to collect insights from all of you about how it could be more clear for everybody. First, I want to start super high level about why this matters. There's a clear progression in how B2B go-to-market works in a cycle of about 5 to 7 years, where when marketing automation like Marketo and HubSpot started in the late 2000s to the mid 2010s, the entire strategy was lead-based. Because we didn't have Zoom info or the million other contact databases, we didn't have intent data, we didn't collect and connect marketing investments to actual sales and revenue. And so at that point, all marketing's job was, and all we needed to do in our go-to-market machine was get leads, phone numbers and email addresses from people so that sales could call people, because if they didn't have those email addresses and phone numbers, then they wouldn't have anyone to call. And there wasn't a lot of effort spent on, are these people actually qualified to buy from us? It was like, let's just run SEO and have people fill out our forms and sales will call people that could never buy from us, is a lot of what happened back in the day, which is why you hear the age-old thing about like marketing leads suck. Back in the day, most of them did. Most of them still do today. Then we had this progression that started maybe in the mid 2010s, and I am basically having an end date of this in 2023, which is the movement of account-based. And what happened during this era is that companies recognized, hey, there are certain types of accounts that are going to close that are better fits for us and things like that. So we're going to put more scrutiny over the types of accounts that we invest marketing dollars in and how much we invest. And then there was an attempt to try to bring sales and marketing together around a set of accounts, which I think worked with some progress, but I don't think many people feel like we're all the way there yet. And then the next step, which is 2024 forward, and there will be a time where there's additional things built onto this. I just see this as a total expansion of the companies that are trying to have some type of account-based motion. I don't call it ABM. It's about B2B companies that want to sell to accounts. And those accounts could be Velocity with 1 million TAM or, 50 accounts, top 50 CPG companies, either way. That what actually matters is we need to have the right accounts at the right time. And the way that you determine the right time is through the signals. And so there's a very easy example. You take your best fit tier 1 account and the best person into it. Let's say you're selling to the CMO at these Fortune 500 companies, and all of a sudden you're just going to send a cold email to that person. And the ability for you to turn that cold email into a customer is going to be incredibly unproductive, incredibly low efficiency, especially if done at scale. That if you had the same exact person at the same exact account, and that person said, hey, I want a pricing request, or they came to your event and said, hey, I want to see a demo after that event was really interesting, that you have the same person at the same account, the fit is the same, but the signal is entirely different, and the signal makes all the fucking difference. So both of them matter, fit and signal, fit and intent matter, but most companies only decide how they're going to do their targeting and their investments around fit right now, not around intent. Sure, they use intent signals, they buy a lot of intent data, they have a bunch of stuff, and they're trying to use that to take action on things, but what they lack is the actual outcome data of when we did stuff with this signal, what happened? Did we get a meeting? Did it progress into qualified pipeline? Did it turn into revenue? What was the sales velocity? What was the time between stages? How do we compare that against all the other signals that we have in our go-to-market? So big transition here from just account-based to now layering on 2 dimensions, fit and time. So what are signals? Signals are person-level or account-level intent signals that we need to be able to track from when the signal happens all the way to revenue. And the reason that we track them is because signals are when our sales team invests human capital and resources and energy to try and take action on those signals. So the real reason to do this is because whether you look at it in a signal way or not, that 80% or more of the entire go-to-market budget for a B2B company is spent specifically to take action against signals or to create the signals, one of those 2 things. And it's important to note that signals are an entirely new dimension of data that sit alongside your accounts, your contacts, and your opportunities that track discrete signals that those accounts are sending you. And then when sales takes action, measuring the progression of that, knowing that sales is going to take intentional, dedicated action on people and accounts multiple times within their life cycle with you as a company, as well as through net new acquisition and expansion. And right now, the core standard objects that we use inside of our CRM with accounts and contacts and opportunities just fundamentally break when you want to use this new dimension of data and try and measure it on an account or contact record, which is what many of the Gartners and the Forresters and those types of people are recommending. They're not even talking about signals yet. It'll take them 3 or 5 years to really figure it out. But they're recommending that you try to track this on the opportunity object with a W-shaped influence model. And that's not really a signal. It's an entirely different dimension of the data that couldn't be tracked properly on an opportunity. And you can sort of see the flow over here where there's a trigger. Typically, we spend money to trigger a signal. We buy a Google ad, we run content syndication, we buy a technology tool that feeds us intent data where we pay per signal. Maybe we pay 75 cents to get that contact from ZoomInfo. Maybe we pay a certain amount of money to get that data every single time. So it's not just marketing investments, but also technology and data. And data is a massive expense for B2B companies. And all of those different places are actually monies where we spend money to trigger signals. Then there's an actual signal. What did the buyer do? Then it converted into a sales alert and then tracked all the way through the progression, measuring all the stages. And then if that signal becomes recycled, we didn't win there, then that data gets logged. And then if that person comes through again and creates another signal, or that account comes through and creates another signal, all that stuff can be tracked again. It also creates the ability to have a true account level funnel where you can look at all of the accounts that are attached to all of the signals and look at the progression and see where do all of our accounts sit in our bow tie framework or in our funnel or however, you want to change the diagram to make it cute and pretty. So next one, I sort of alluded to this before, but where do signals come from? We have first party signals, which B2B companies, I think, know pretty well. We have form fills, and now the companies are buying tech to do PQL scoring, maybe buying it to do MQL scoring. We have our event data that gets fed in, maybe through an event platform or manually through uploads. Maybe we have website de-anonymization that's then feeding us the accounts or even the people in those accounts that are on our website at any one time. And we have all these different signals that come from first-party owned assets. And then, whether you want to call it second party or third party, I'm not here to distinguish that. We have technology and data platforms that are then sending us data that then our sales team is using, which could be, a review site. It could be a third-party lead gen program like a direct LinkedIn ad or even a content syndication, intent data providers, contact data providers, account-based marketing platforms that then package that account intent data and contact data and resell it to you. There's a lot of places where that stuff is happening, where RevOps or whoever's implementing is building it so that sales has the signals. But again, nobody's really focused on measuring the outcomes of the signals. So it's a total black hole about what signal actually works, what signal doesn't, why. So just a recognition there. The current assumption in most people, especially those that buy in a lot to the idea of multi-touch attribution and buying journeys, is that B2B buying is a linear process where you never move backwards. And that one thing that happens, then the next thing that happened, just because we can measure it, was impactful and important and had all this different impact. And that all of a sudden, after these 20 things happen, that magically this customer goes from not in market to in market because they take a specific action that we deem it as an MQL. That's how people think about attribution right now, which then drives all the thinking around the influence revenue model, whether we use a U shape or a W shape, and how we think about it. If you go to the next one, here's what's actually happening is that your accounts and the people in the accounts are flowing from in-market and consideration to not in-market to in-market and consideration, not in-market over and over again. And they're sending you signals that might indicate that they are more or less in market during any one time. And then instead of waiting until the last point, the 30th touch point that we have from Visible, just because they did something like a hand raiser, to recognize that they actually send us signals along the way where if we knew that signal, we might have closed that account 6 months earlier by acting on it appropriately using data. And so being able to recognize that it's more of a fluctuation between in-market and not in-market, which requires that people can go backwards in their quote-unquote buying journey and forwards, which I think intuitively makes sense to all of us. And then if we can recognize the signals and then take action on them, take action on them with the right message to be able to get the meeting, that we might be able to win deals a lot faster by using data. This is like one of the number one takeaways, and the things where an actual sales leader really needs to be thinking about this thing is that sales productivity can vary 100x difference depending on what signal your sales team acts on. And this data is consistent across almost every company that we look at. And so you might have a third-party lead gen program like this one here, Facebook lead gen ad, or a content syndication, or even a LinkedIn lead gen ad, where your sales velocity is super low, where you know, 2,000 signals and sales actions are required to win one customer, that a lot of marketing dollars get spent on advertising or other forms to be able to create that signal, and are totally unproductive for every single go-to-market department in the company. Then you have high quality signals, which could be, you know, medium quality and high quality signals. And the quality of the signal is based purely on the performance data, that we're able to see that other ones where our sales velocity is 100x better, we get 100x more revenue from these types of signals. Our conversion from stage 2 to closed 1 is twice as much as other signals. And you're able to take that data and then use it to say, okay, we want to focus our sales energy here. We want to focus our marketing energy here to create these signals that deliver these results. And here are all the things that we want to cut out of the mix, because the signals are telling, and the data around the signals are telling us that this is a waste of fucking time. And this is intuitively clear. And we can analyze almost any company's data and be able to present them this exact phenomenon within their own data of 100x difference in productivity that they don't see when they look at a lead-based or just a fit-based model. They never see these insights, and they think it's all about, we have to be talking to the right person, or we have to be talking to the right account and these people in this account. And the reality is those two things matter, but we need to be talking to the right people at the right accounts at the right time. And the thing that dictates our sales performance and productivity and quota attainment and marketing ROI and these types of things are actually mostly determined by the signals, which is a huge insight for people. And then a couple of other core points, then we'll get into some Q&A. The core recognition is that go-to-market teams spend tons of money to create signals. 60 to 80% of the marketing program budget is deployed specifically to create signals, not to build brand, not to convert active pipeline, not to expand current customers. 60 to 80% of the marketing program budget is used to create signals. And then we don't even have clear tracking and clear outcomes and clear reporting around the outcome of that significant, massive, outsized investment from the marketing investments. But in addition to that, over here in other departments, some companies will spend millions of dollars a year on data. They'll spend millions of dollars a year on ABM platforms and outreach and all these other types of tools and technologies. And there's huge expenses and ongoing usage-based expenses regarding the data that they consume. And they don't also have no tracking on the use of the data, the outcomes of that data, and which things work and which ones don't, specific to sales prospecting. And the huge point here is that it's not like companies that aren't tracking signals are like so far behind and they're missing something. But the reality to admit that even the most sophisticated companies and some of the companies and executives and ops teams that I think have the highest quality data and really talented people and things like that still are mostly not tracking signals today. And so to recognize as a B2B company that somewhere between 70 and 100% of your revenue is not able to be traced back to a signal, therefore you don't have any of these insights, makes it a lot harder for you to make what should be fast and easy decisions, and it makes them slow and hard. And then all of a sudden we have a 50-slide marketing deck with our use shape model trying to make a decision where if we had the signal data, we could make that decision with one slide, one set of data, and one meeting. And so a couple notes on how the signals are mostly untracked. People think that they track most or all of their marketing things, but the reality is that they're tracked in an incomplete way. They don't collect all the data. It's spread out across multiple properties. And honestly, it's mostly not usable because they use multi-touch attribution as a crutch to try and interpret bad data rather than just fixing the data. And so companies that track their Google Ads performance alongside their demo requests and they mix those two things together is a huge flaw and mistake, and yields that you can't do anything with that data because Google Ads is used to be a trigger to a signal, and the demo request is the actual signal. And so we cannot be mixing triggers and signals, which most companies fall victim to. Most companies don't track UTM parameters, which is fucking wild. It's like, why? It's literally the easiest thing ever and gives you amazing insights around your things that you're spending to create signals, and most companies don't track them consistently. I have outbound in here, but I'm really going to start viewing it not as outbound, which means that there's also an inbound, but just as sales prospecting. Sales prospecting is a total black hole. And to recognize that, and CMOs will admit that with that exact language, 50% of our revenue comes from, independent sales prospecting, and we have no idea why they're reaching out, even to the level of what message they're saying, what the outcomes are, and things like that. It's wild. Like Outreach and SalesLoft don't provide even the basic level of data on this type of stuff to optimize an outbound engine, and they're not tracking signals. It's a total black hole, and it's a massive investment. And so while people are challenging, like, is the SDR model right for us? The reality is that they don't have the data to even make that decision. So instead, it's relying on trying to figure out how many costs per meeting got booked or some other peripheral metric, when it should be, these are the things we do in prospecting that work. These are the things that we don't. Here's how much staff and capacity we need to do to keep doing the things that work. It should be more simple than that. So with that said, big overview on signals. Maybe you can feel it from my energy. Like, I really believe in this concept, and also believe that the concept is now framed in a way that executives and people truly understand the implications, the issue, why it's important. And so would love to use this as a discussion. Again, like, staying on the concept of signals is amazing. If we want to go in other directions, I'm totally cool with that. You all can take it however you want. But collecting some feedback and questions regarding, like, sort of this story around this and how you might feel like it would be successful or face friction inside of your organization. I'd love to hear some of those things.
Yeah, we've got a couple people in the chat that want to come on and kind of more discuss a couple of things. So first, I'm going to bring on David while I work around some technical issues.
Hello. Hi, I wasn't prepared to come on. So I guess my first question, I had two questions really. One is trying to understand a taxonomy of signals would be really helpful, right? What are signals? What are things that count as signals?
Couple weeks. Sydney's finalizing it. We already use it on customers, but we're finalizing. It's coming.
That would help, I think, because sometimes the vagueness of the term signal might become confusing. And then the wide range of signals might also itself become confusing.
Yeah, let's clarify this just for people as well. I have it on. So a signal is different than a touch point that you get from a trackable thing. So what a touch point does is try to track every trackable interaction. And the reality is that most of the trackable interactions are just noise. It's just collecting data for the sake of collecting data. Hey, this person opened our email. Hey, this person, came to our website, or just a bunch of random shit that doesn't actually help you make decisions. And a lot of the touch points fall into that category. The objective of a signal is to isolate, this is what the customer did that triggered our sales team to reach out and invest time, resources, and energy in order to try and convert that signal. And that is the isolation of the signal is really what we're going after, deemed by when is sales investing time, which allows you to clearly optimize how many sales reps do we need? Do we need to invest more to create signals? What are the best performing signals? Is it buying more data? Is it spending more on marketing? Is it things like that? And it finally creates the context for you to look at the go-to-market holistically. And I'm trying to keep getting this point across, and it's resonating with some people, is that inbound and outbound doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. And the reality of why is that no matter what your customer does, that sales will need to do prospecting. If your customer fills out a demo form, your sales team still needs to do prospecting on that account and convert it into a meeting, just like they would with an ebook, or they bought data, or they pulled a cold list or anything. Regardless of whether it comes from marketing or some other department, sales and SDRs need to prospect and convert and run the entire sales process either way. The only thing that changes is the signal. And so by getting rid of this distinction of inbound and outbound and saying we have all these signals, and then some people are going to have to do prospecting, and then we're going to have to close that pipeline, and looking at it as a whole go-to-market unit, it just creates so much potential efficiency in the engine. Because right now, what sales does for their own outbound prospecting, as people call it, versus what marketing is doing to drive inbound, like there's no cross-pollination. There's no saying, oh, over here, this thing in outbound's really working, so let's divert marketing budget over there to do that more. None of that stuff is happening. One, because they don't have the data. Two, because they think about their go-to-market in silos. And so they just don't see those types of insights. But good point. But I love, yeah, your questions are awesome, David, because they spark good ideas for me. But so let's keep going.
All right, cool. I guess one of the charts you had showed a kind of a timeline of progression, and that sometimes the person was in, sometimes they're out, and so forth and so on. So it seemed to imply that there are positive signals of intent, if you will. I don't use the word intent. That'll just muddy the waters. There are signals that indicate something interesting, and then there are signals that seem to indicate something that are kind of like, maybe call them negative signals. That's my word, not yours. Or signals that say, not now. So are there, within your thoughts, do you have in mind certain signals that are kind of like, oh, they exhibited this type of signal, we should put them on the back burner because my time is better spent with people who exhibit this kind of signal? I'm trying to keep my question without using too many definitions.
So there are, in fact, some signals where your sales team does stuff and wins 0% of the time. I would call that a useless signal. There are things where there are signals where your sales team wins very rarely, which we would call a low productivity signal. And there are things that are higher. And it's almost more looking at it as a spectrum than binary. And the spectrum gets created through a metric like sales velocity or conversion or something like that, where you can sort the low or sales productivity, which is sort of a function of sales velocity. And so you have like the lowest performing, and then you have the highest performing, and then you can sort those, and you can just make a call and say, things that are under this level of productivity, we're not having sales take action anymore. And that can change. And dynamically, you could have things that then get action. You could have experiments where you collect data for a month and you decide after that whether it gets approved or not. And basically getting to a point where we have clear data to say, these are the times where we should use human capital to be able to do certain things that only human capital can do.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I didn't get that from the slide, but you've explained it, and it makes total sense. To oversimplify it, you might say quality, right? But different companies might have different signals that indicate different quality. So a quality signal for company A might not be a quality signal for company B, potentially, depending on who they are and what signals they have that are also available. Cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I'm pretty sure you know this, David. I'll just hammer home the point. Like oftentimes quality becomes a subjective thing. It's why I'm not using intent anymore either, because people say, oh, like, because it was a demo request, it's high intent. But the reality is that you can spend a lot of money on Google ads and drive people into a demo form, and it's not really high intent. It's not actually about just the signal. It's about the trigger and how they flow through.
That's a really great point to have made. I'm so glad you did, because I think that's part of what you're introducing here is a slightly different way of looking at some of the same things that we've always looked at.
Exactly. These concepts are not revolutionary and they're not super different, but it's the angle and the perception of how you're looking at them that is the actual unlock.
And my hindsight's 2020. And if I were to be marketing you, I would say, gosh, we should update this slide now to somehow indicate what is a signal, how is it a little different from intent. Mm-hmm. Intent is subjective. A signal is this. Some of those thoughts that you've had there help break this out for me. Thank you very much.
That's why we do this. Great part. I'm going to re-listen to this whole thing and we're going to update it. So I appreciate the feedback and thoughts. Super helpful.
Next, I'm going to bring on Chris. He wanted to discuss some content from the presentation.
What's up, man? Good to see you again.
Yeah, you as well. This is great to see it come to life on paper. So thank you to you and the team for pulling it together and sharing it. I don't know, like there's one question and kind of two observations. So bear with me for a sec. But on investments, I think one of the pitfalls that I see as a CMO is you're going to have to be very careful, especially as you look at the third-party investment categories where people like ascribe all sorts of secondary effects to those investments when they don't see that, the signal converting into, something that's productive for sales. And as a CMO, you just need to like cut the noise out right there, because you're going to get, every vendor is going to say, oh, but it also does X, Y, and Z. And, that may be somewhat true, but usually it's not.
Yeah, totally agree with your observation. Technology vendors will start to tell you, oh, what really matters is the combination of these 10 things. But in our data and what I consistently see is no, it's actually just the thing that drives sales to take action that really has a big determinant. And sure, there's maybe some impact of combining the signals, but if somebody opens 9 emails and then opens a 10th email, or they open 9 emails and then they submit a pricing request, like it really makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, and I think you said this last week, measuring demand creation. So this kind of demand creation versus intent capture, these two big categories. And last week we were talking about how you can kind of separate out the two. You also said last week, and I challenged myself to think about this over the week, measuring the demand creation. Like, I think we got a lot of work to do on that side too, because you're going to be talking to CMOs who are making budget decisions on creation versus capture. And I don't think that we have a great way of measuring demand creation to the account level or the core audience that we want. So just something to think about.
While I totally agree with you that the way that B2B companies try to measure the impact of their demand creation motion is totally inadequate and sets most of those investments up to fail or not be able to be measured properly, the reality is that companies spend 4, 6, 8% of the total marketing budget against that objective. And they spend the other 85 to 92% to create signals. So while everyone comes to me and they're like, oh, Chris, we need to measure top of the funnel so that this 5% of brand, we're going to know what's working and what's not. They fucking waste, $10, $15 million a year creating signals that have clear low ROI and no impact. And being able to just prioritize and sequence where, like based on the level of investment that goes there, what is the place that we need to fix first? It's not that we shouldn't go and measure top of the funnel. It's that, hey, we spend 18 million to create signals right now and 2 million on brand. Why don't we figure out how to make the 18 million actually work before we go and buy marketing mix modeling software to measure the 2 million? And so you need both, but it's about, especially as a company where like bigger companies, RevOps becomes very bureaucratic, very slow, things like that what are the most important things that are going to drive the biggest impact in the shortest period of time with the least amount of effort? And signal tracking is that thing for 99, 100% of companies. So that's just, yeah. And then, at Paceto, we'll solve the demand creation measurement thing next. But when I think about what my customer needs and what I would, if I was a CMO, where I would be focused, it's so crazy because I love podcasting and I love doing all the things that you're trying to measure and advocating for. But it's just where the money gets spent right now deems us focusing somewhere else.
I would like to see something where that $5 million you free up from doing a much better job on, cleaning up your signal architecture goes into demand creation. And then but in order to justify that, I need to be able to say, I'm doing this, I'm going to hit 90% of my target accounts with demand creation activities. That's then going to drive the signals down the funnel. Yeah.
So like, here's an example, right? We work with a company, close to 100 million ARR company. Last year, they spent $26 million on marketing. Okay. And then you have 26 million, let's just say 50-50, even though it wasn't that exact, but 50% on programs. All of a sudden you have $13 million on programs, and like 11 of that 13 was spent on Google search. Okay. And then we basically run the signal analysis. We identified $5.4 million that Google that was low performing, untenable, greater than 60-month direct CAC payback without sales SDRs, all that stuff like that could immediately get cut. And simultaneously, we're saying, okay, you have a $26 million marketing budget and your marketing ROI as total marketing investment against revenue is 79 cents on the dollar, which isn't terrible, but it's not good. And so then you can recalibrate and say, if we wanted to have the appropriate ROI, a higher performing ROI, how much should we spend? Okay, it's $17 million next year. So then we say, okay, so now we have to get from 26 to 17, and you take 5.4 out of Google, you take a big chunk out of events, you take a big chunk out of this. All of a sudden you're at 17. You put $5 million back on the bottom line for the company that can go into profit, product development, scaling a different program or go-to-market initiatives like ecosystem or partnership. and you're getting a much better result in marketing. And then you take some of the money that was spent on Google and so overinvested there, and now that's going into your user conference and brand and running LinkedIn ads in a different way. And so that's effectively what we're doing with companies. It's just in big companies with big budgets, it just doesn't happen overnight. You actually need like a strong process in order to not break the existing machine. Like a company is just a huge machine. That's what it is. And as you start to, if you play with it and you like, take the gas out of it, or you put oil that it's not expecting in it and things like that, you can really mess up the machine. And so it's just about having a process to stage those out where we get to where we need to go, but we do it in a way that's safe and mitigates risk for the business.
Makes sense. My last comment, Chris, is on you had that great chart with sales velocity impact and revenue impact. I think it would be great to dive a little bit deeper in a future one on that, because I think a lot of people looked at those numbers and was like, we know the numbers are driving a decision that makes sense, but what actually, like, how do I get to those numbers in my business?
Totally. Yeah. So that's what we're doing at Paceto. And like for a real, one of our customers, we'll take all the signals, it could be thousands, and sort them from the most productive, highest sales velocity signals with at least X amount of closed won deals, like a minimum, all the way to the worst. And at the bottom, you'll see all these signals that produce no pipeline and close no deals. And a lot of times it's the same place where a lot of marketing dollars are being spent to create signals that create no pipeline and win no close won deals. And so it just becomes very fast. Like companies' decision-making process around their investments is so complicated, so nuanced, way too many people involved, too much bottoms-up reporting where we can't make decisions fast. And so by isolating, we're going to measure this part of the process this way, which then allows us to have a purpose-built system to make decisions fast here. We're going to measure a different part of the process this way. I think like breaking it down, which you alluded to earlier, becomes a big unlock for people. But what people struggle with is sort of like while the solution is being built, sort of playing on both sides, like continuing to use their multi-touch attribution tool, just like they have for the past 4 years, to make decisions, while also looking at signals that they're trying to figure out that might give them different data and different insights to make decisions. And people struggle with looking at multiple dimensions of the data. I think they just want one thing with one answer and that type of thing. So yeah, it's not just Paceto, like my company's focused on this, but many companies will figure out this is important and pursue it. Many already are. So I expect that, solutions will be here coming, 6 to 18 months.
We need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here, Chris. We'll catch up again soon.
All right. I'm going to bring Kelsey on next.
Awesome. Hi, Chris. So this is related to really a conversation you were having with other Chris a second ago, but just wondering about how you would think about using signals to measure demand creation, or like use as a proxy for impact of demand creation activities. So I can also give an example of something that I'm working on right now is my company we're moving into a new solution category and wanting to do a paid social campaign targeting this specific department, driving awareness around, our expertise in this new category. And I have a list that I've worked with, developing an account list, like segmenting what personas we want to target within that account. And I was thinking about measuring impact on there as like how many within these accounts are we reaching? How deeply are they engaging with us through this paid social campaign, to try and give some sort of proxy of like basically social engagement as a signal, used as proxy for are we driving impact with this campaign?
So I think the big unlock here is like the words that I heard you say, demand creation, awareness, engagement, things like that when you make an investment in a marketing program or in data or something like that, you make a binary decision about what is the purpose of this investment, and then you measure it against that. And so what you told me is, and how I interpreted it, is that your objective here is not to create signals. Your objective is not to create key actions that your sales team is going to take action on against accounts with this specific campaign. It's meant to have people start to consider and be aware that in the future, they start to take certain signals that then become the signals. And so what we don't want to do is mix the signals that we're using to take action from sales and convert that into pipeline, mix that with signals where we're trying to create demand, which is what multi-touch attribution does right now. It just mixes it all into one thing. It doesn't have purposes assigned to the investments or objectives so that everything gets measured in one way, regardless of the purpose of those investments. And that's really the root of the issue. And so, signals we've talked about a lot. When it comes to demand creation, if you wanted to know the impact of that, sure, you have surrogate measures like cost per account reached or cost per engaged account or number of accounts reached. Like you have those like quasi vanity metrics, right? You could reach that many accounts and have zero impact. They could like not consume the ad, not see it. So you have quasi vanity metrics. But the real way to be it is when the signal gets created or throughout the sales process that you're asking people, where'd you hear about us? What source of information did you trust? What source of information did you look at along the way? And then when they say, I heard about you on LinkedIn, which if you do the things that you're doing and all these people in the market haven't heard about you, and then you're running effective LinkedIn campaigns, that people will tell you that. And it just becomes and to me, like I've studied this problem, I guess is for lack of a better word, like the issue in not being able to measure demand creation activities, like probably the most research and the most focus on this thing of anyone in the world over the past 5 years. And what I just told you is the best solution, and people don't like it because it's not a technology stack, but it really is the best solution. And Natalie was on 2 hours ago talking about their advisor program where they have a bunch of like influencers that give them product feedback and things like that. And they can measure clear direct ROI from the word of mouth referrals through self-reported attribution that come through that program. I do the same thing with my podcast and LinkedIn and these events and the speaking engagements I do and our team that posts on LinkedIn. And a variety of other companies have the exact same success where they are dialed in on these are the things that we do to get our target accounts in market and our target customers in market. And it becomes a very easy way. And then you just layer on different ways of asking your customer questions in different ways to continue to learn about what's happening at that part of the process. To me, and then from signal down, it's an entirely different way of looking at it. And so instead of mixing them into one, actually breaking them into two discrete processes. How do we get our accounts in market? And then when accounts are in market, what signals do they send us that lead to high sales productivity? Just looking at them independently.
Okay, awesome. No, that was helpful.
Let us know what you find out.
I will.
All right. We covered quite a bit today
Sure
and
did.
in the chat. A lot of dense kind of content. If anyone has any other final questions. Okay, Chris has another one. I'll read you on this real quick.
Oh, it wasn't a question, just an observation that I'm going to steal this relentlessly from you, Chris, which is how are we getting our target accounts in market is just a great CMO question to ask your teams.
Great question to ask your customers too.
How are you getting in?
When you look at it that way and you don't, a lot of the things that companies do at the top of the funnel or to build their database are just noise propped up by metrics that got created by marketing automation vendors 10 years ago. That they don't actually make an impact, and that just the outdated metrics that companies use continue to allow like first touch attribution that HubSpot installs. Like HubSpot has first touch attribution natively in their product, and a lot of companies never fix it. So the only data they have around attribution is original source, and it leads to a lot of bad marketing investments and bad decision making based on first touch attribution and a variety of other things like that. But why is the reason that HubSpot uses original source? So that because marketing is very likely to have first touch attribution when you run a bunch of SEO and lead gen programs, and it helps marketing prove the ROI of what they're doing. And so we just need to, I don't know, just need to look at it differently, I guess. All right, everyone. Love you all being here. I got so much value from the feedback. So thank you all for participating. We're going to continue to iterate on this. I think in like 2 weeks, I'm speaking at a conference for the first time on this. So your feedback and insights is really helpful as I try to nail that one for the first like public one. So appreciate you all being a part of what we're doing here. We'll be back again next week, so look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. We've hit the signal concept pretty hard the past couple of weeks, and so I'm going to make a commitment to going in a slightly different direction for people, that people might be coming here for some other reasons. So we'll go, I'll bring a new topic or new data to the table next week that goes in a different direction. So appreciate y'all being here. Hope you have a great rest of your week.